Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander Tough Rules and Cool Interactions, episode 64. I'm back, I'm still alive, and it's a new year, so let's get to it. Today's episode is going to take a look at one of the most popular commanders in the format, and I faced against it while over the holiday breaks, and saw my opponent try to do something interesting with it that sadly didn't work out in his favor. So the commander is Osgir the Reconstructor, who has 3 abilities. The first is Vigilance, which is nice, but not what we're all too much focused on for this episode. His second ability is an activated ability that says, for 1 generic mana, and by sacrificing an artifact, target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And then finally, his third ability is another activated ability for X, tap, and exiling an artifact card with mana value X from your graveyard in order to create 2 tokens that are copies of the exiled card. Activate only as a sorcery. Osgir is an artifact reanimator deck that cares about getting some powerful artifacts into your own graveyard and then using his ability to get multiple copies of those tokens into play for those powerful artifacts that are in play. Oftentimes, these artifacts are ones with enter the battlefield effects, and or they have dies or leaves the battlefield triggers. You can use his first activated ability to sacrifice artifacts you already have in play to get them into the graveyard, or you can just use a lot of cards like Faithless Looting to just discard those artifacts from your hand into your graveyard. Towards the end of 2022, we got a lot of products with a bunch of artifact focus, so I'm not surprised that I did run into somebody over the holiday break that was running an Osgir deck to use a lot of these new artifacts. There was one card in particular that he was running though, and it's a very solid option for an Osgir deck, but he was trying to do something with it that sadly did not work out how he thought that it would. The card is Phyrexian Dragon Engine, which is a 2/2 artifact creature with double strike, and it has an unearth ability for 3 red, but it also has a triggered ability that says, when Phyrexian Dragon Engine enters the battlefield from your graveyard, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. Wheel-type effects are perfect for an Osgir deck, as again, they're a great way to get your artifacts from your hand into your graveyard for you to hit them with Osgir's ability. So what the player was hoping to do was to get his Phyrexian Dragon Engine into his graveyard by just playing it and then sacrificing it to Osgir's first activated ability, and then using his second activated ability to actually bring in 2 token copies of Phyrexian Dragon Engine so that he could wheel himself twice. But sadly, this will not trigger the Phyrexian Dragon Engine's triggered ability. The logic is that you're using Osgir's ability to remove the Phyrexian Dragon Engine from the graveyard and then creating the 2 tokens from the Phyrexian Dragon Engine that was in the graveyard. But to find out why this doesn't actually work as such, we have to take a close look at the actual wording on these 2 cards. Rereading the Phyrexian Dragon Engine, it says, when Phyrexian Dragon enters the battlefield from the graveyard. And then let's reread Osgir, and he says, exile an artifact card with mana value X from your graveyard to create 2 tokens that are copies of the exiled card. So what this means is that the actual Phyrexian Dragon Engine card is still in exile when we're making the tokens of it. And when the tokens enter the battlefield, they check and see if they entered the battlefield from the graveyard. But those tokens were never in the graveyard. The actual card of Phyrexian Dragon Engine is what was in the graveyard, now in exile, but the tokens are created on the battlefield. They were never in any zone before they existed on the battlefield. I actually covered something similar to this in the very first episode of this Tough Rules and Cool Interactions series as to how tokens are created only on the battlefield. That episode is a bit different to this one, but still shares a similar result in that the wording of these cards, these effects, and these rules are all very specific and strict as to what triggers and what doesn't. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you found this video to be entertaining, at least, and I hope that a few of you maybe even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta!